Stop everything you are doing right now and listen not with your ears alone, but with the spirit of your being, for what I am about to speak is not mere instruction, it is initiation, not motivation, but spiritual legislation, not possibility, but metaphysical certainty. You are not waiting on God's financial plan. God's financial plan is waiting on your divine habit, your rhythm of righteousness, your spoken decree of faith, your consistent alignment with the laws that govern abundance not by human toil, but by holy order. You have been trained to believe that money moves through effort, through struggle, through strategy and savings and sweat. But I say unto you, money moves through obedience to spiritual architecture, and every act of faith you take in alignment with divine law is a key, a master key, that opens doors no man can shut and pours out blessings that break the banks of reason. I am not here to speak of budgeting tips or marketing tactics or hustle culture wrapped in sacred language. I am here to deliver the blueprint of the treasury of heaven, to unveil the secret scaffolding upon which divine wealth is hung, the 8 habits that do not merely attract money but command it, call it forth from the unseen, establish it in the seen, and anchor it in the permanent vibration of overflow. These are not self-help hacks. They are the spiritual habits of kings and queens who know they are heirs to the invisible inheritance, co-creators with the Most High, stewards of divine circulation, instruments through which God's prosperity plays its sacred melody in the marketplace of the earth. God is not random. Supply is not chaotic. Heaven is not a disorganized vault. Everything in the divine realm operates by law, by covenant, by spiritual logic deeper than intellect and higher than economy. And if you feel you have been locked out of abundance, it is not because God has denied you, but because you have not yet learned the key that fits the door you were born to open. Every habit I now unveil is a chamber in the house of your divine destinite chambers. 8 keys, 8 spiritual technologies that, when practiced in rhythm, with faith and fire, will not only unlock God's financial plan for your life, but make you a channel of unstoppable increase, a steward of the floodgates, a vessel of visible supply so complete, so perfect, so multiplied that you will forget the days you called yourself broke, and remember only the glory of the God who never ran out, never hesitated, never withheld, but waited only for your mouth to move and your hands to obey. So as I take you now into the first divine habit, speak this aloud with me, for your voice is your entrance. I now build my financial future on divine rhythm, not random chance. I am no longer waiting, I am aligning. I am no longer guessing, I am governed by law. And the floodgates of heaven now open not by luck, but by habit, not by force, but by faith, not by trying, but by truth. Let us now enter the first chamber in the treasury of divine law, the foundational habit upon which all financial resurrection rests, the beginning of all visible increase and spiritual inheritance, the habit of speaking to supply, not about scarcity, for the mouth of man is the gate of manifestation, and every word uttered in fear is a lock on the vault of heaven, while every word spoken in faith is a key that opens divine channels, invisible corridors, unexpected rivers of gold flowing not from man, but from God, not from logic, but from law, not from worry, but from word. I say to you plainly, you cannot continue narrating lack and expect to dwell in overflow. You cannot confess your drought and harvest rain. You cannot meditate on what is missing and attract what is present in the Spirit. For the law is absolute: whatsoever a man speaketh, that shall he also see. And the one who speaks to their supply as though it were already present walks in the same dominion as the one who raised Lazarus from the tomb. For lack is a death state and wealth is resurrection, and resurrection does not begin in the banquet, begins in the mouth. When Job declared, "Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee," he did not say wait for confirmation, ask for permission, or analyze the balance sheet of reality. He said decree, establish, manifest, and then witness the light shine on thy ways. This is the order of spiritual command. This is the divine habit of kings. You must stop describing what you don't want and begin declaring what already is in the realm of spirit. You must stop whining about your lack and start commanding your wealth. You must stop calling your bank to see what they say and start calling forth supply from the eternal storehouse with your decree. This habit is not optional, it is essential. It is not a technique, it is a spiritual law. And until your language becomes the sound of provision, your life will echo the vibration of lack. So I tell you now, as a divine steward of the infinite, that your new morning ritual must not begin with social media, news reports, or dread-filled thoughts of what you owe, or what you lack, or what you fear, but with holy speech aimed directly at the throne of supply. Say it aloud, and say it until it becomes your unconscious breath. I now speak to substance. I speak to invisible wealth. I speak to divine channels. I am permanently funded by divine law. Money, you are not my master, you are my servant. You appear where I speak, you flow where I decree, and you multiply where I bless. And do not speak this once, speak it daily. Speak it boldly. Speak it as one who holds the scepter of the kingdom. For every time you say it, you rewire your nervous system. You realign your inner world. And you release spiritual instruction into the field of form. You are not narrating circumstances, you are building realities. You are not reporting facts, you are planting futures. You are not describing delay, you are commanding delivery. And I charge you now, for the next 7 days, do not let one word of financial fear escape your lips. Cancel every complaint. Refuse every sentence of scarcity. For the tongue is a sword, and you must now wield it with precision, with purity, and with the posture of royalty. Before the first coin appears, before the first invoice is paid, before the first manifestation is seen with the natural eye, there must be praise. For praise is the proof of faith and the language of the soul that already knows the treasure is on its way. The thank you note that arrives before the package, the rejoicing of one who understands that God's financial plan is not a guessing game nor a delayed promise, but an eternal structure that bends to the boldness of gratitude. Praise is not a performance, it is a tithe of trust. Praise is the divine down payment on substance unseen, the unlocking tone that opens gates no man can shut. The habit of praising before payment is not emotional, it is architectural. It is a spiritual tool of government, a spiritual tithe that aligns your vibration with heaven's economy. The psalmist said, "Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise." This is not poetic suggestion, it is divine protocol. Praise is how you enter. Praise is how you access the treasury. Praise is how you speak in the atmosphere of miracles. You cannot come into the kingdom of wealth murmuring. You cannot inherit overflow while complaining about bills. You cannot walk in divine supply while sowing doubt with your breath. The angels of increase, the stewards of the storehouse, the keepers of the vault, they respond not to begging, not to analyzing, not even to planning, but to pure, unshakable praise. So I tell you, every morning, before you check your balance, before you look at the invoice, before you open that email, or read that message, or think that thought, stop, tithe your words. Tithe your voice. Give God the first and best of your speech. Declare 10 things you are thankful for financially, even if they have not yet arrived in form, for you are not thanking man. You are not praising conditions. You are praising principle, and principle never fails. Say, I thank you, Father, that money flows to me richly and freely. I thank you that all bills are paid in full and ahead of time. I thank you for divine channels of income. I thank you for surprise checks, unexpected favor, supernatural refunds. I thank you that you never forget a seed, never forget a need, never delay a miracle. I thank you that I am the head and not the tail, the lender and not the borrower. I thank you that what I see does not limit what I speak, and what I speak is already mine in the invisible. I thank you that abundance surrounds me, supplies me, and stays with me now. Let this be your tithe, not of coin, but of consciousness. And do not speak this mechanically. Let it rise like incense. Let it come from the belly of belief. Let it be the tithe of your inner altar, the offering that opens the gate to divine transaction. For the spiritual law is this: he who gives thanks before receiving has already received. And if you would walk in God's financial plan, you must speak like one who has already inherited the promise. For it is written, "He who honors me, I will honor." Praise is honor. Praise is wealth. Praise is the soil in which the seed of supply is planted, watered, and harvested. And if you would harvest without delay, you must sow praise without condition. Before your feet touch the floor, before you check the clock, before you let the world decide what this day will be, you must remember this divine law. Nothing happens by chance to the one who walks in truth. Nothing unfolds by accident to the one who speaks with power. Nothing arrives randomly to the one who begins the day, not by observation, but by declaration. For the tongue is the rudder of your reality, and the first words of the day are the seeds of the harvest to come. If you wait to see how the day will go before you speak, you have already surrendered your dominion. If you open your mouth only after the world has spoken, you have become a servant to appearances, rather than a commander of the invisible. But when you rise and say, "This is a day of divine supply, a day of right people, right place, right provision," then heaven begins to structure itself around your speech. Then the angels receive your schedule. Then substance begins to gather at the sound of your certainty. It is written in Genesis that God said, "Let there be," before there ever was. He did not wait to see what light might do. He declared it into being. And the divine image within you has not changed. The power of your word is not less than His when it is spoken in alignment with truth. And the habit of beginning your day with dominion is not positive thinking, it is spiritual law. Do not let another sunrise pass where your first thought is fear, where your first word is complaint, where your first emotion is dread. These are the unconscious decrees that build unconscious delays. You must declare the day before it declares itself. You must tell the world what to deliver, not ask it what it might allow. You must decide the rhythm of your prosperity before the news, before the email, before the headline, before the conversation, before the demand. So I instruct you now, as one who has walked this path, as one who has seen substance obey the sound of spirit, every morning, as breath rises, as eyes open, as consciousness stirs, declare aloud with rhythm and fire and vision, "This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and prosper in it." I now command divine timing, divine people, divine payment. All things are now working for my good. Money flows to me through perfect channels. Surprises arrive in peace. Solutions appear without struggle. I am covered by divine law. This day obeys the voice of truth. And you must not mumble it. You must decree it. You must not whisper it in doubt. You must proclaim it in boldness. For the law is, that which is spoken first becomes the leader of all that follows. Make this habit a holy ritual. Post it by your bed. Set it as your alarm. Make your first meeting of the day a meeting with God, and your first act of business the issuing of a decree. And I assure you, yes, I testify with the fullness of spiritual authority that if you declare your day before it begins, your day will begin to bow to your word. For heaven does not respond to observers, it responds to governors. And if you would govern your atmosphere, your bank account, your interactions, your path, your provision, then your word must go forth like a general's command, like a prophet's proclamation, like a king's royal edict, backed by heaven, enforced by angels, and established in divine time. You cannot partner with fear and expect favor. You cannot bow to worry and walk in wealth. You cannot agree with the voice of lack and still claim to be in covenant with divine substance. For no man can serve two masters, and fear is always the false god that seeks to sit upon the throne of your mind, always whispering its clever lies in the language of logic, always rehearsing worst-case scenarios, always replaying past failures as prophecy, always suggesting that you are unsafe, unsupported, unprepared, unequipped, when in truth, you are the living temple of the Most High, spoken into being by divine breath, watched over by invisible supply, held in the grip of a God who cannot lie, and surrounded by substance more responsive than shadow. If only you would speak as one who knows and not one who fears. Fear is not a feeling, dear listener. It is an agreement, an invisible contract written in panic and signed with hesitation, and the moment you break it, the moment you tear it up by the authority of the word, The moment you say with power and certainty, I no longer serve fear. I no longer honor lack. I no longer accept the imagination of insufficiency as my truth. Then and only then does divine supply begin to surge through the broken dam of disbelief. Then and only then do miracles speed toward you like rivers loosed from stone. Then and only then does money, which was always waiting behind the veil, begin to appear in ways that make no earthly sense but perfect spiritual alignment. You must speak boldly, daily, rhythmically. I cast out the fear of not enough. I cast out the fear of loss. I cast out the fear of instability. I place my trust not in the stream but in the source. My income is not limited to one job, one client, one paycheck. My wealth is not dependent on the economy, the policy, or the opinion of man. My provision is divine. My channels are infinite. My supply is eternal. I live in the kingdom of overflow. Say this aloud, not once, not occasionally, not only when you feel brave, but especially when you feel anxious, especially when you feel small, especially when fear roars loudest. For fear is the darkness that flees at the sound of the spoken word. And your job is not to wait until you feel safe, but to speak until the atmosphere obeys. This habit, this daily renunciation of fear, is not optional for the one who would live richly. It is the daily cleansing of your temple, the sweeping away of thieves and merchants from the holy place of your mind, the refusal to let the sacred altar of your consciousness be defiled by the language of limitation. Burn every budget written in panic. Delete every journal entry soaked in worry. Cast down every inner voice that sounds like a banker more than a prophet. You are not called to manage crumbs. You are called to multiply loaves. And multiplication begins where fear ends. For perfect love casteth out fear, and you are not called to flirt with faith, you are called to marry it, to live in its name, to speak from its belly, to walk in its decree. So speak now, speak again, speak always. I am no longer in agreement with fear. I walk with doesnt, God walks with gold. Money does not come from people. Money does not come from effort. Money does not come from banks, or bosses, or deals, or even labor. It comes through them, not from them. And until you make this distinction in your consciousness, until you stop bowing to the channel as your source, until you break the golden calf of job worship and burn the idol of human dependency, you will find yourself begging at doors that were never yours, chasing after opportunities that are beneath your spiritual dignity, and shrinking the Almighty down to a salary, a client, or a limited sum, when God has never been limited to human delivery systems and the treasury of heaven has never once filed for bankruptcy or delay. So I tell you now, you must speak, not to your job, not to your paycheck, not to your boss, but to the source behind them all. You must lift your voice and declare, divine channels open to me now. I am not confined to one source. I am not bound to one stream. I call forth new rivers, new roads, new means, new methods. Supply finds me in strange and perfect ways. I make my withdrawal from the infinite bank of divine substance. I do not strain, I speak. I do not beg, I believe. Let this be the voice that vibrates in your house, in your morning mirror, in your thoughts as you walk, in your tone as you move. Let your whole being be tuned to the sound of divine supply coming forth, not from effort, but from alignment. And let me say this plainly, there is a difference between opening yourself to channels and idolizing them. Many speak the truth in the morning and cancel it by noon because they still watch the one paycheck, the one client, the one employer, the one number in their app, waiting for that specific stream to rise, thinking that if it doesn't, the word has failed. But I say to you, when one channel dries up, another opens. When one door closes, 7 more swing wide. When one source seems to vanish, the law of divine compensation multiplies elsewhere. And the only requirement is that you do not panic, do not curse the withering brook, do not fall into the appearance trap, but rather praise the giver and call forth new supply from the unseen. You are not waiting on the job to pay you. You are commanding the supply to clothe you. You are not hoping a deal comes through. You are speaking provision into being. You are not watching a client email with desperation. You are seated in spiritual assurance, knowing that God has 1,000 ways to prosper you, and you need only stand in truth. Hold your peace, and keep your voice aligned with divine law. Every time you say, "Divine channels open to me now," you release heaven's river toward your feet. You melt the ice of delay. You dissolve the barriers of logic. And you become the magnetic field that attracts miracles in disguise, because supply obeys faith, and faith is not vague, it is vocal. It is specific, it is consistent, and it is free from fear. Now go and speak. Speak as if angels are arranging new paths right now. Speak as if heaven is funding your purpose with joy. Speak as if nothing is closed to the one who walks in divine rhythm. For the channel may be new, but the source is eternal. And when you honor the source, the channels cannot help but overflow. There was a woman, nameless in the eyes of the world, but not nameless to spirit, who came to me once not with coins in her hand but with complaint in her mouth, not with treasure in her purse but with trouble in her speech, and she poured forth a well-rehearsed narrativa, song of lack, a chant of defeat, a melody of misery, and, though her circumstances were surely heavy, and her years had been marked by loss and delay, what struck me deeper than her story was the rhythmic certainty with which she told it. The way her voice had become the echo chamber of her own poverty, the way her tongue had been trained not for prophecy but for pitiful repetition. And I said to her, not with condemnation but with compassion, "My dear, your life is not bound by condition, but by confession. You do not need more opportunity, you need a new sentence." So I gave her a simple instruction, not a strategy, not a savings plan, not a business proposal or networking contact, but a word. I said, "For the next 30 days, speak only this: abundance surrounds me. Abundance seeks me. Abundance flows to me from every direction." I told her to say it in the morning before her feet touched the floor, to whisper it at night before the pillow met her cheek, to declare it aloud before checking her accounts, to replace every temptation toward complaint with this holy substitute. And I told her that the tongue, when sanctified by faith, becomes the rudder of reality, that what she repeated would soon become what she recognized, and that the atmosphere would not resist the sound of truth spoken in spiritual dominion. And she obeyed not because she felt it, but because she dared to believe it. For 30 days, she did not rehearse the tale of her misfortune. She did not recite her debts. She did not explain her history to anyone who would listen. She simply walked in silence until she could walk in power, and she spoke the new song even when the music of evidence had not yet played. And then it began. On day 12, a check arrived in the mail from a closed account. On day 16, she reconciled with a friend who had once owed her money, and without even being asked, he repaid a debt she had written off years ago. On day 21, her employer, previously distant, unexpectedly offered her a promotion she had not applied for, accompanied by a bonus she had not expected. By day 30, her entire vibration had shifted, not only in her bank account, but in her spirit, in her posture, in her face, in her speech. She did not merely attract money. She was no longer a match for lack. She had evicted poverty from her vocabulary. She had dissolved the spell of the sob story. She had rewritten the script of her soul. She was no longer begging life to remember her, she was commanding life to obey her. And the transformation began not with a windfall but with a word. Not with proof, but with proclamation. Not with evidence, but with exaltation. This is the law. This is the structure. This is the spiritual blueprint. That the tongue becomes a temple, that the voice becomes a vault, that speech, when aligned with heaven, overrides history and remakes the atmosphere to reflect what was declared, not what was endured. You must understand that faith is never idle, never abstract, never disembodied. It does not live in theory or drift aimlessly in the clouds of hope. For faith is not a mood or a mantra, but a moving force, a living substance, an active vibration that must find expression in both the tongue and the toe, in both the declaration and the direction, in both what you say and what you do. And any faith that is spoken but not stepped into is not yet faith. It is fantasy wrapped in language. It is the shell of belief with no breath behind it. and it cannot produce until you partner your mouth with movement, until the sound of your decree is matched by the stretch of your action, until what you prophesy in the spirit becomes what you pursue in the visible, without apology, hesitation, or delay. For how many souls have said, "I am wealthy, I am provided for, I am in divine supply," and then turned around and canceled it with the sin of inaction, the doubt of delay, the laziness of fear, waiting for a sign while ignoring the instruction, waiting for a miracle while neglecting the moment, waiting for heaven to drop something in their lap while refusing to move their feet toward the very place where the treasure has already been appointed? And I tell you, divine supply does not reward the still tongue alone. It responds to the full alignment of the being, the words spoken, the step taken, the email sent, the offer released, the hand opened, the risk embraced, and the move made in the rhythm of spirit. So make this your habit. Speak first, and then move. Declare before direction, prophesy before production. Say the word, then walk as if it is done. For faith without works is dead, and declaration without demonstration is spiritual amnesia. Say, every action I take is backed by divine favor. Every step I take is charged with divine acceleration. I do not move alone, I move with the winds of heaven at my back, with angelic force at my side, with divine timing beneath my feet, and with supernatural openings ahead of me. This is not the movement of desperation, it is the movement of dominion. You do not knock on doors as a beggar, you walk into rooms as one sent. You do not post your offer from fear, you publish your work as prophecy. You do not make the call trembling in doubt. You make it knowing the words you speak are already answered, the opportunity is already aligned, and the one you are calling has already been prepared by heaven to receive you. And if the result does not come instantly, you do not retreat into silence or shame, you declare again. You move again. You realign again. Because you know the word is working, the atmosphere is shifting, the invisible is taking shape, and heaven is watching not just your mouth, but your motion. When your mouth and your movement agree, the treasury of God opens. When your mouth and your movement agree, the angels are released on assignment. When your mouth and your movement agree, what was blocked becomes blessed, what was late becomes on time, and what was small becomes multiplied beyond measure. So ask yourself today, not only what have I said, but what have I done? Not only what have I affirmed, but what have I activated? Not only what do I believe, but where have I moved in obedience to that belief? For your wealth is not waiting in the repetition of your declarations alone, but in the alignment of your steps with the spiritual architecture of divine law, which is not passive, but participatory, not delayed, but dynamic, not timid, but thunderous in motion, calling you forward into the manifestation you've already declared. There is a holy discipline far too many neglect, a divine release that most have not yet mastered, a sacred surrender that is not weakness but wisdom, not passivity but prophetic vision, not letting go from fear but letting go into faith. And it is this: to say, to speak, to declare with power and peace, the 7-word key that unlocks the vault of divine upgrade. This or something better now manifests for me. For when the soul becomes fixated on one channel, one outcome, one timeline, one door, it binds the infinite into a finite plan. It cages the eagle of heaven's provision into the footprint of one familiar path. It reduces the miracle-working mind of God into the narrow corridor of human logic and comfort, and in so doing, it delays the very thing it desires. For God cannot pour rivers into thimbles, nor can divine flow move through pipes that have been constricted by the grip of control. To say this or something better is to tell heaven, I trust you more than I trust my own imagination. It is to acknowledge that what I desire may be good, but what God desires for me is greater. And I do not fear the upgrade. I do not resist the redirection. I do not mourn the door that closes because I know it was not a rejection, but a rerouting, not a denial, but a divine detour, not a loss, but a leading into the field where the blessing is not partial but perfect, not limited but limitless, not transactional but transformational. And so the soul that can boldly declare, this or something better, is a soul that is not shaken by delay, not disturbed by denial, not offended by divine redirection. For it walks in the rhythm of divine trust and floats in the current of divine creativity, and knows that the blueprint of spirit is always better than the map drawn in the mind. This habit is the habit of open hands spiritually, emotionally, financially. It is the habit of divine flexibility, not the rigidity of fear. It is the habit of releasing without regret and receiving without resistance. You must train your tongue to say it daily, whenever a desire is declared, whenever a vision is written, whenever a dream is spoken, this or something better, under grace, in perfect ways. And what this does, dear one, is it seals your declaration in freedom rather than fear. It lifts your vibration from obsession to expectation. It tells the universe that you are not married to the method, you are married to the miracle. And it teaches your soul to rejoice in the surprise rather than mourn the delay. For all delay is an illusion in divine mind, and all detours are still leading to your destined place. Say it when the deal falls through, this or something better. Say it when the money doesn't come on your expected timeline, this or something better. Say it when you feel resistance, rejection, reversal, or redirection. This or something better. And let your energy be unwavering, not because you are indifferent, but because you are divinely assured that the upgrade is always the signature of divine supply, that the thing you lost was only the envelope, and the better thing coming is the letter written in heaven's own hand, containing riches you did not imagine and timing you could not have orchestrated. Make this your holy language, not only in times of uncertainty but in every step forward. Write it over your goals, attach it to your prayers, breathe it into your affirmations. And as you speak this sacred phrase, you will feel the grip around your desire loosen not in surrender to nothingness, but in surrender to a higher, holier something, the something that has already been assigned to you, crafted for you, matured for you, and now drawn to you by the rhythm of your trust. There is a silence that speaks louder than noise, a moment at the close of each day when the veil between the seen and the unseen becomes thin, when the activity of the outer world gives way to the receptivity of the inner, when the soul becomes soil and the word becomes seeded in that sacred pause before rest. The tongue, if trained by truth, has the power to plant not only peace but provision, not only sleep but supply, not only rest but resurrection. And that is why, my beloved, the final habit, the final key in this divine treasury of habits, is this. Seal every day with a seed word, a phrase, a declaration, a divine utterance that is not commentary on the day past, but prophecy over the day to come, not a reflection of what was, but a decree of what shall be. For what most people do not know, what even many spiritual seekers have not yet realized, is that the last word you speak before sleep becomes the first energy your subconscious carries into creation. It becomes the mold around which the next 8 hours of divine craftsmanship take shape. As you sleep, your soul does not slumber, it travels. It partners. It arranges. It receives instructions. It prepares encounters. It draws forth design. And if you speak a seed of fear, you will wake to confusion. If you speak a seed of despair, you will rise into doubt. But if you speak a seed of truth, of supply, of spiritual dominion, if you speak wealth, gratitude, and divine orchestration into the darkness, then the angels of alignment will go forth, the treasury of heaven will be stirred, and the substance of what you declared shall take shape even while your body rests in stillness. For spirit does not sleep, and truth does not wait. And so I ask you, not just as a teacher of metaphysical law, but as one who has seen the miracles, what are you speaking at the end of each day? Are you rehearsing your worries? Are you rehashing disappointments? Are you saying things like, I hope tomorrow is better, or I'm so tired of lack, or I don't know how much more I can take? These words are not harmless. They are not neutral. They are not forgotten in the night. They are swallowed by the subconscious and projected into form. You are the author of your tomorrows, and your final word is your final signature, your closing decree, your spiritual imprint upon the hours to come. Let me give you a better sentencino, a holy sentence, one that aligns with the rhythm of heaven and opens the floodgates of divine economy. My word seals this day in wealth. The God of all supply works while I rest. I wake to provision, peace, and perfect direction. Speak it not once, but 7 times. Speak it not as a wish, but as a law. Speak it not with anxiety, but with authority. Let it vibrate in the bones of your being. Let it echo in your bedroom like a trumpet in the temple. Let your bed become an altar, and your pillow a covenant stone, and know that as you lie down in declaration, you rise up in demonstration. For the word shall not return void, and the rest of the righteous is not passive, it is creative, magnetic, fertile, and filled with divine labor beneath the surface. This habit may seem small, but it is the gatekeeper of your garden. It is the sentinel of your subconscious. It is the architect of your next breakthrough. Do not go to sleep without setting the compass of your consciousness. Do not drift into night with words of confusion on your lips. Instead, let your last breath before sleep be a breath of boldness, of blessing, of biblical decree, and say with holy confidence, "The night is mine to multiply. The dawn is mine to dominate." The angels of God move for me even now. And so, as we conclude this divine architecture of habits, as we finish the temple of 8 sacred actions that unlock the treasury of heaven, let us now step into the next chamber, the midpoint charge. Heaven honors order, shall we? Order is the language of heaven, and rhythm is the currency of divine exchange. For while man pleads for miracles in chaos, God waits for pattern. God waits for devotion. God waits for a life that has been architected around law instead of emotion, obedience instead of opinion, decree instead of disorder. Let me tell you this plainly and without apology. The heavens are not moved by panic. They are not stirred by need. They do not open for desperation or for drama. They open when a soul begins to speak and move and act in divine alignment, when that soul proves through habit that it can be trusted with provision, that it can host the inheritance, that it can carry wealth without distortion or delay or destruction. The divine mind is an orderly mind, and where there is divine order, there is divine overflow. You cry out for breakthrough, but your habits are broken. You ask for stability, but your declarations are inconsistent. You speak wealth on Sunday and worry on Monday. You affirm abundance at dawn and complain about bills by noon. You tithe in fear and beg in sarcasm. You bless your business in the morning and curse your paycheck by nightfall, and then you wonder why nothing holds, why nothing flows, why the treasury remains sealed. I tell you this with love but with fire. Heaven is not a slot machine. It is a system. It is a structure. It is a spiritual ecosystem built on faith and fed by frequency. God does not reward hysteria. He rewards rhythm. The children of Israel wandered for 40 years, not because God was late, but because they were disordered, speaking against their own deliverance, contradicting the manna with murmurs, wasting divine supply through spiritual inconsistency. And so I say again, heaven honors order. The moment you commit to a life of divine routine and not just emotional reaction, you will see wealth begin to obey your rhythm, money will begin to follow your voice, channels will open on schedule, favor will find you like water finds a stream that has been dug with faithful hands. You cannot have the results of the spiritually wealthy while living like the spiritually reckless. The reason the world looks at lucky people with awe is because they see the fruit, but not the root. They see the checks, the clients, the expansion, but they do not see the discipline, the declarations, the rituals that those souls have built over time, in partnership with invisible law. For every harvest is hidden inside a habit, and every treasure is hidden inside a temple. And the 8 divine habits I've given you today are that temple. But the temple must not be visited once. It must be inhabited. You must dwell in the law. You must abide in the rhythm. So I now issue a chargeno, a suggestion, not a whisper, but a sacred charge from the treasury of heaven. Keep these 8 divine habits for 8 weeks. Do not break them. Do not delay them. Do not water them down with doubt or wrap them in passive language. Build your days around them. Protect your mornings and your nights. Speak with fire, give with praise, act with confidence, release with joy, and rest with power. If you do this not in striving, but in structure. If you obey the order of the kingdom, you will walk into the provision of the kingdom. For the word of the Lord says, "Prove me now, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you shall not have room enough to receive." This is not performance. This is alignment. This is not superstition. This is spiritual government. You are building a life that heaven can bless without contradiction, a temple that supply can dwell in without interruption, a rhythm that divine gold can dance to. 8 habits, 8 weeks, 1 covenant, 1 unstoppable flow. And now, having placed this charge before your spirit and sealed it with sacred command, let us move forward into the next gate, the testimony that confirms the truth. The man who spoke, "I am rich," into rent for what is declared in law must always be demonstrated in life. Let's go on. Let me now speak to you not in theory, but in living proof, not in abstract principle, but in divine demonstration, not in poetic law alone, but in real-life fulfillment for what is divine order without divine result, and what is law without the living evidence of its power. Let me tell you the story of a an ordinary man, no more favored in the eyes of the world than you, no richer in background, no more connected, no more educated, no more privileged, but a man who came to the end of his logic, the end of his credit, the end of his planning, the end of his savings sand, found himself staring at a rent bill he could not pay, a due date that would not move, a landlord that would not wait, and a fear that would not be quietened in that moment. When every human resource failed, when every phone call was already made, when every delay had been granted and exhausted, this man remembered the one thing that cannot be overdrawn, the one resource that is never empty, the one instrument in the spiritual bank that has never declined his word. And so he stood in that tiny apartment, lights dim, fridge nearly bare, with a piece of paper in his hand and a storm of fear in his mind. And he did not beg, he did not cry out to man, he did not make one more call in paniche. Simply looked up, held that bill in both hands, and spoke out loud with a boldness that did not come from evidence but from eternity. "I am rich. I am not waiting. I am supplied. This rent is already paid by divine appointment. Money is now coming to me richly, rapidly, and under grace." And when doubt rose up to mock him, because it always does, he spoke again. And when his own mind whispered, "You're lying," he shouted louder, "I am rich, and it is done." And when the clock ticked closer to the hour of eviction, he did not collapse, he declared. He stood still, and he let the word go to work. Now what happened next defies material explanation, but it does not defy spiritual law. A former client, long gone, long silent, sent a message that night, apologizing for a delay, and asking for his current address, said she had just received a retroactive check for a large corporate contract, and felt compelled to tithe a portion of it to someone who had blessed her in the past. The amount? Exactly the rent, plus overflow. Arrived within 48 hours. The man didn't beg. He didn't hustle. He didn't hustle. He didn't reason. He ruled. He spoke the thing, and the thing obeyed. Not because of who he was in the world, but because of what he said in the Spirit. Now I tell you this not so you can marvel at a miracle, but so you can mirror a method, not to romanticize a story, but to reveal a structure, not to say, maybe one day that will be me, but to say, if I speak like that, my life must bow too. For what this man did is not special, it is lawful. It is accessible. It is replicable. And the only condition is your consistency, your boldness, your refusal to mix the holy word with unholy doubt, your decision to speak like one who owns the vault, even when you haven't yet touched the coin. He did not speak to impress. He did not speak for likes or pity. He did not speak to be spiritual. He spoke because the word is the original tool of creation, and he chose to use it, and so must you. There is a rent coming due in your life. It may not be literal, but it is spiritual. There is something you must pay, something you must meet, something you must move, and human strategy will not do it. Logic will not unlock it. but the word spoken from the throne room of your own spirit will. For when you declare, the angels execute. When you decree, heaven arranges. When you say, I am rich, and you mean it from the marrow of your spirit, the whole of divine supply reorganizes itself to match your vibration. So do not envy the man in this story, emulate him. Do not ask, will this work for me? Ask, will I work it like he did? Will you speak without contradiction? Will you affirm without apology? Will you declare without delay? Will you rise each day and plant the same word again and again until it breaks the concrete of circumstance and bursts forth like the shoot of new wealth through the ground of what once looked like famine? Because if you will, if you truly will, you too will say, I spoke my way into abundance. I called it in, and it came. I was rich before I ever saw the check. And now, with this testimony echoing in your spirit, let us proceed to the next sacred warning, not a habit, but a caution, the invisible habit that unravels the rest. The most dangerous habit, contradiction. Let us expose it. Let us silence it. Let us purge it from your temple. Now hear me clearly. For what I am about to say does not stroke the ego. It does not appease the doubter. It does not allow for spiritual double-mindedness. And it makes no room for lazy declarations followed by emotional sabotage. This is the part of the journey where we must speak plainly and surgically, where the spiritual scalpel must cut through sentiment and slice the habit that undoes all others, the invisible destroyer, the silent saboteur, the most tolerated sin of the tongue, contradiction. For what use is it to sow divine declaration in the morning and reap doubt by dinner time? What gain is it to affirm divine abundance at sunrise, only to speak of bills and burdens, and bad luck by nightfall? What power is left in a man's word when he speaks like a king one moment and like a beggar the next? Contradiction is not harmless. It is not being human. It is not spiritual realism. It is the canceling agent of every spiritual transaction you try to initiate. It is double-mindedness, and the scripture is clear. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let not that man think he shall receive anything of the Lord. Did you hear it? Let not that man think. Let not that woman think. If you contradict your declaration, you cannot receive what that declaration had begun to build. If you water the field and then pour poison, you cannot expect the harvest. If you light the lamp and then blow out the flame, you cannot expect the room to remain bright. And contradiction, dear listener, is exactly that. It is spiritual sabotage dressed in casual speech. I am wealthy, you say on your knees, and then 10 minutes later on the phone you say, money's tight. You affirm divine timing in the morning, and by lunch you complain, nothing ever shows up on time. You bless your business with the words of success, and then you joke with your friends about just scraping by. You laugh at your own pain to sound relatable. You downplay your desires to avoid sounding arrogant. You shrink your vision with your own tongue, not realizing you are using the same mouth to build and bulldoze your own house of prosperity. This is contradiction. This is spiritual instability. This is a habit that must die today, right now, under the fire of revelation. Do not think that contradiction is small. It is deadly. It is the leaking pipe in the temple of your divine architecture. It is the word that delays your inheritance. You ask, why hasn't it shown up? And the answer is this: because you keep issuing mixed signals to a divine system that only honors unwavering vibration. You say, open the gate, and then you whisper, never mind. You say, bring the rain, and then you raise an umbrella. You declare, I walk in divine wealth, and then you cancel the order by saying, well, with my luck, something always goes wrong. That is not humor. That is not humility. That is contradiction. And it is costing you miracles. You must become a person of one sound. You must become a being of undivided vibration. Let your yes be yes and your word be law. Let your mouth become a single river, not a split stream. You cannot afford to be cute with your language. You cannot afford sarcasm when you are building sacred substance. You cannot afford to joke about poverty when you are invoking divine wealth. Do you think heaven finds it charming? Do you think your angels are laughing when you undercut your own decree with a self-deprecating jab? No, beloved. They grieve. They halt. They fold their wings and wait until your vibration aligns again. So today, here and now, let us repent not in shame, but in clarity. Let us cast out the demon of contradiction. Let us evict the vocabulary of doubt. Let us no longer speak with split tongues, one praising and one cursing, one affirming and one complaining. Let your mouth become holy. Let your language become aligned. Let your words become unbreakable chains of truth that pull heaven's supply into your earthbound realm. Say this now, with me, aloud and without apology. I refuse to contradict my truth. I cancel the language of doubt. I bless my supply with one tongue. I speak divine wealth without reversal. My mouth is a temple of order. My word is sealed in heaven. And now that you have cut the root of contradiction, now that you have stepped into the clarity of one sound, let us move into sacred reconstruction, into the purification of your very vocabulary, into the daily replacement of every unconscious word that limits your destiny. The tongue must be trained. The mind must be reprogrammed. The inner vocabulary must be rewritten. Now that we have cut the root of contradiction, now that we have silenced the chatter of spiritual sabotage and made the temple of the tongue sacred again, we must not leave the garden barren. We must not let the soil sit empty for, if you do not plant divine language, where fear once reigned, the weeds of unconscious habit will return to choke your harvest. And so, this is not the end of the purification. It is only the beginning of a higher planting, a deeper discipline, a daily renewal of speech that aligns with heaven's treasury and turns your very words into currency of the invisible. And you must now consciously, deliberately, and rhythmically program the vocabulary of your entire being, not just in your affirmations, but in your casual comments, in your internal dialogue, in your texts, in your jokes, in your self-talk, in the tone you use when speaking about your future, your business, your family, your finances, and your own self-worth. For words do not care if they are spoken in jest or in ritual. Words obey tone, not mood, law not emotion, structure not whim, and your vocabulary is not merely communication, it is construction. You must now examine every phrase that exits your mouth and ask, does this sentence build, or does it break? Does this sentence summon wealth, or summon delay? Does this sentence harmonize with the kingdom of abundance, or echo the realm of human reasoning? For there are common phrases innocent in tone, deadly in spirit that you have spoken for years, and you must now evict them as you would evict spiritual squatters from your divine mansion, for they do not pay rent. They do not build. They do not serve. They only siphon power from the vibration of your being and blur the frequency of divine reception. You must cast out every, I don't know how, every, we'll see, every, maybe it wasn't meant to be, every, I'm not sure I can, every, that's too expensive, every, that's just how life is, and replace them with precise, unshakable, vibrationally aligned declarations such as, it is done. This is unfolding perfectly. I walk in divine timing. My provision is already prepared. All things are working in my favor. My answer is on the way and cannot be delayed. And I now receive the highest outcome by divine right. And you must not only say these things, you must say them, until your inner voice is trained to echo them automatically, until your subconscious begins to correct any untrue thought the moment it arises, until your soul becomes allergic to complaint, until your tongue revolts at the sound of lack, until your mind is so steeped in divine vocabulary that even under pressure, even in the fire of delay, even in the presence of apparent lack, you speak the same sentence you spoke in the calm, the same truth you spoke in the prayer closet, because that is when wealth hears you most clearly, not when you affirm in the morning, but when you remain unwavering in the chaos of noon, not when you sing in the sanctuary, but when you refuse to contradict your decree in the wilderness. Reprogramming is not passive. Reprogramming is not occasional. Reprogramming is war. It is the battle of the word against the wound. It is the sword of truth against the fog of appearance. It is the steady dripping of divine vocabulary into the dry well of human speech until the spring breaks open and gushes with supernatural increase. You must write these new words. You must record them in your voice. You must speak them until your atmosphere bends to them. You must meditate on them as you walk, whisper them as you wait, sing them as you drive, declare them as you move through the marketplace. For your life follows your language. Your wallet obeys your rhythm. And heaven cannot send what earth will not welcome in speech. So I say to you, begin today. Erase the old tapes, burn the old scripts, cast out the borrowed language of fear, and install the rhythm of divine vocabulary. Begin with this. I speak only truth. I declare only order. I affirm only abundance. My tongue builds my world. My words carry wealth. My speech is sacred. I do not say what I feel. I say what is divine. And now that your inner language is being rebuilt, now that the tongue is tamed and trained, let us open our eyes to the hidden realm, the silent rituals, the private declarations, the unseen habits that determine the very climate of our spiritual economy. For there is one more secret to unlock, and it does not lie in what is public or visible. It lies in what you do when no one sees, when no one hears, when no one is watching but heaven itself. Now we come to the sacred silence, the invisible rhythm, the holy repetition hidden behind closed doors and whispered in the chambers of the soul where no applause echoes, where no audience waits, where no one claps, comments, likes, or validates, and yet it is here, in this realm of the unseen, that the true power of prosperity is forged. For it is not the loud moment of affirmation that builds the house of wealth, it is the quiet, consistent, unbroken practice of divine habit when the world is asleep and the ego is not fed, when the heavens alone are your witness and your faith alone is your fuel. And you must understand, beloved, that your financial transformation is not dependent on a performance before man, but on covenant with God in secret, in stillness, in solitude, where the angels gather around the sound of your daily obedience, where the spirit world leans in to listen, not to your emergency prayers or your panic decrees, but to the hum of your holy habits, because God does not reward panic, God rewards order, and heaven is not moved by need, it is moved by rhythm. It is your unseen habits that train the soil of manifestation. It is what you say when you rise and no one is listening. It is what you speak before you check your balance. It is what you choose to believe after the bill arrives. It is what you mutter under your breath in the grocery aisle. It is what you declare when disappointment knocks and delay dares to speak again. These are the moments that determine wealth, not what you shout in church, not what you post online, not what you read once in a book, but what you sow, steadily, secretly, like a scribe of divine order rewriting your entire life from the inside out. Do not be deceived by appearances. Appearances are merely delayed reflections of past declarations. If you want new outcomes, stop looking at your life and start looking at your language. And do not say, "But nothing is changing." Instead, ask, "What am I repeating?" The rich do not repeat lack. The wealthy do not speak fear. The prosperous do not narrate failure. They speak in rhythm with their result. They speak in harmony with their harvest. They speak not for effect but from essence, and their essence is truth. Their essence is divine alignment. Their essence is dominion over delay, because their essence is formed in secret, shaped in silence, carved in the caverns of their daily decisions. So let the unseen become sacred. Let the ordinary become holy. Let brushing your teeth become a moment of declaration. Let pouring your coffee become an act of gratitude. Let folding laundry become a ritual of provision. Let every quiet step echo, "I walk in divine wealth." Let every uncelebrated task whisper, "I am a steward of supernatural order." Let your life become a temple of habit so aligned with heaven that the angels don't have to wonder what you'll say. They already know, because you say it every day, at the same hour, with the same power, in the same faith, without needing a miracle to believe, without needing proof to persist, without needing a sign to stay the course, because you no longer wait to feel wealthy. You speak wealth, you walk wealth, you repeat wealth until your cells are soaked in it, and your reality is rearranged by it. For what you do in secret is shouted from the rooftops in manifestation. What you say behind the veil appears in public harvest. The one who wins the unseen realm rules the visible realm. So ask yourself now, what are your unseen habits saying about your covenant with divine supply? What are you rehearsing when no one is watching? What do you declare before the door opens? What do you believe when the account still looks empty? This is your true wealth identity. This is your real bank account. This is your silent credit line with heaven, and it never lies. So seal this chapter with your voice. My unseen habits are holy. My quiet declarations are loud in the spirit. I plant in silence and reap in overflow. I train my tongue daily, and my wealth appears faithfully. The secret place is my treasury. The unseen is my incubator of divine riches. And now that your unseen life is aligned with divine frequency, now that your daily rhythm has become a song of spiritual wealth, we shall move with boldness into the architectural structure of this rhythm. We shall build your daily ritual like a divine schedule, a heavenly calendar, a blueprint for prosperity that the soul can follow and the spirit can fund. Let us now enter the chamber of divine rhythm, for wealth is not merely a moment of manifestation, not simply a breakthrough or a blessing tossed into your lap without structure, but a house built daily, a temple formed by sacred schedule, a treasury opened through holy routine, and I tell you plainly that a man who keeps no order cannot receive sustained increase, because wealth responds to rhythm, and God is a God of pattern and procession, not chaos and craving. So if you truly desire to be a steward of divine abundance, you must live by ritual, not superstition, not reaction, but spiritual design. And this design, when followed, creates an inner frequency so strong that lack cannot land and fear cannot function. For the one who honors rhythm becomes untouchable by the lawless winds of human economy, because they no longer bow to external conditions, they dwell in covenant structure, and that structure calls forth substance without delay. So I will now give you a blueprint, not a schedule of obligation, but a rhythm of transformation, not a to-do list, but a divine loop of becoming, and you must follow this not as a burden, but as a sacred path, a spiritual pulse, a wealth choreography that turns your ordinary hours into extraordinary gates of abundance. For time itself becomes a servant when it is ordered by truth, and you will see that each day is not a blank slate, but a consecrated construction, already prepared by divine intelligence to release provision, favor, and opportunity. But it waits on you to speak, to declare, to call it good, to name it abundant, to stamp it with heaven's seal before the world can stain it with fear. Begin your day before the world speaks to you, before the phone chimes, before the bills whisper, before the mirror reflects your mood. Speak first. Speak loud. Speak holy. And let your morning word be your architectural command, saying aloud, "This is a day of divine payment, divine favor, divine transaction, and divine timing. I command perfect supply to meet me here." And let this be said before breakfast, before business, before busyness, for it is not an afterthought but a first fruit of the tongue, and what you speak first will govern all that follows. Then, as you move through the tasks and tides of midday, when distractions multiply and the mind begins to scatter, and the old voices of worry attempt to creep back into the temple of your mind, pause and give your midday thanking, a deliberate turning of the soul back toward supply, a moment when you refuse the evidence of appearances and declare, "Even now, unseen wealth moves toward me. Even now channels are opening. Even now divine decisions are being made in my favor. Even now the heavens are pouring out to my good." And say this not because you feel it, but because you choose it. Not because you see it, but because you seed it. And in doing so you realign yourself with the rhythm of answered prayer. Then, when the day begins to close, when the mind tallies the hours, and the soul begins to drift, do not allow yourself to fall into slumber with uncertainty in your spirit or scarcity in your speech. Seal the night with your evening seed, and say this before sleep, Say it as you lay your head down. Say it until peace returns and fear flees. All things are now working together for my wealth. My words are active even while I rest. My harvest is growing while I dream. And I sleep in the security of divine provision. And know this, that the subconscious listens most clearly at the gates of sleep, that your spirit is instructed while you slumber, that angels work best in the silence of surrender, and that by seeding your night with truth, you water your tomorrow with power. And once a week, take what I call the praise and surrender day, a day not for demanding, not for strategizing, not even for speaking desires, but a day of consecrated gratitude, where you review all the good that has come, and you give thanks not for what is only visible, but for what is inevitable. And you declare, thank you for supply not yet seen. Thank you for doors not yet opened. Thank you for solutions already complete in spirit. And then you surrender all attachment to timing, form, or outcome, and you say, this or something better, by divine right, under grace, in perfect ways, and let your rest be your worship, let your peace be your praise, and let this weekly rhythm restore your soul to the frequency of trust. This is the ritual of the wealthy in spirit. This is the blueprint of the prosperous in heart. This is the architecture of heaven, made manifest in days and minutes and habits and hours. And I tell you, if you walk this rhythm, you will walk in supply. If you follow this structure, you will find substance waiting. If you honor this divine calendar, time itself will bow and pour treasure at your feet. For heaven honors order, heaven honors rhythm. Heaven honors the one who keeps covenant not just in crisis but in consistency. Say it now. My day is a temple. My tongue is the key. My schedule is holy. I do not live by accident. I live by divine appointment. And now, having built this rhythm, let us look to a living testimony of what happens when this blueprint is honored in full. For it is one thing to be taught and another to be transformed, and I will now show you what happens. When divine habit breaks the yoke of debt and births the overflow of heaven, come with me now. There once was a woman, perhaps not unlike you, who lived for years beneath the shadow of financial fear, not because she was foolish, not because she was lazy, not because she lacked faith in God, but because she had unknowingly spoken herself into a cage of contradiction. For while her heart believed in divine supply, her words rehearsed human struggle, and while she tithed in habit, she also worried in secret, and while she praised with lips, she murmured with her mind, and so her account remained low, not because heaven had denied her, but because her habits had deluded her. And I say this to you with love and with clarity. The universe does not deliver what you desire. It delivers what you daily declare, what you dwell in rhythmically, what you speak when no one is listening, and especially when lack appears to mock your faith, because true wealth is not the overflow of emotion, but the outcome of alignment. And so this woman, tired of contradiction, tired of overdrafts, tired of watching others rise while she remained stuck, made a quiet covenant, no announcement, no performance, just a deep inner yesand, she said. For 30 days, I will speak no lack, I will sow no fear, I will honor divine habit like it is holy scripture, and I will treat my mouth as a temple, not a tool of panic. She began her mornings not with phone checks or balance peaks, but with bold words spoken aloud, words she did not yet feel, words that contradicted her reality but were rooted in spirit's promises. Declared, money flows to me richly and repeatedly. I am provided for even before I ask. Today is already funded by divine law. And though her rent was due and her account was negative and her mailbox carried more bills than blessings, she did not flinch, because she had learned to make the word heavier than the world. And when midday came and the temptation arose to speak about what she lacked, to vent to a friend, to repeat the old story of survival, she caught herself, she paused, she turned inward, and she whispered instead, even now, supply is searching for me. Even now, angels are organizing my increase. Even now, channels I know not of are opening for my good. And though nothing had shifted yet in the outer, everything had begun to shake in the inner, for she was no longer aligned with struggle, she was now vibrating in rhythm with kingdom reality. On day 9, a phone call came a friend from her past, someone she hadn't spoken to in years, had suddenly felt prompted to pay back an old debt, a sum that had been forgotten, a small, 300, but she didn't dismiss it. She didn't say, only, she gave thanks, as if it were 30, for she understood that every drop is proof of flow, every crack is proof of coming flood, every early fruit is proof of a ripe tree, and she said aloud in praise, "This is the first of many, and the next is greater still." On day 16, she was led to apply for a freelance contract she would have previously ignored. "Too good for me," her old self would have whispered. "They won't choose me." Her fear would have added, but her new rhythm had no room for rejection anticipation. She had trained her tongue to speak alignment, and so she submitted the application with a simple phrase, "This or something better," by divine appointment. And 3 days later, not only was she chosen, she was offered a retainer double her request, with creative freedom and upfront payment, and when she asked what made them select her, the client said, "Your confidence felt calm. You spoke like it was already done." And it was already done not because she worked harder, not because she manipulated the moment, but because she had lived in spiritual architecture, she had honored the ritual, she had walked the blueprint, and heaven had no choice but to match her integrity of speech with integrity of supply. By day 30, her overdraft was gone, her rent was paid in advance, her fridge was full, and her smile was no longer a mask of faith, it was the mirror of overflow. But more than the money, she had changed her name in the spirit. She was no longer the woman who feared the first of the month. She was the woman who governed her month with divine rhythm. So hear me clearly. Beloved, you are one habit away from a financial turning, one spoken ritual away from unlocked gates, one disciplined mouth away from supernatural overflow. And the question is not whether God's plan is written. It is whether your habits are aligned with His pen. Say it now, with no fear, with no compromise, with no doubt. I exit the system of struggle. I walk into the temple of rhythm. My habits are holy. My voice is law. I move from overdraft to overflow, and I never return again. And now, having walked through proof and blueprint and holy practice, I will lead you into the culmination, the sealing, the invocation, the tongue-tied contract between you and divine law itself. Let us now speak together in cadence and certainty. And now, beloved, let your mouth become the altar and your word the sacrifice. Let your breath slow down and your shoulders release. Let the distractions fall like dead leaves from your field of focus. For this moment is not casual. It is not mental. It is not ritualistic or performance. It is spiritual rebuilding. It is kingdom construction. It is the law of rhythm meeting the law of dominion. And it begins not with shouting or striving, but with the bold reverence of a soul who knows that every syllable plants, that every utterance shapes, that every spoken truth becomes a brick in the mansion of provision. And so, with sacred awareness and divine confidence, we now speak not to be comforted, but to be conformed to the architecture of the infinite. Repeat with me, not as a wish, not as a hope, but as an ordinance of heaven written on the scroll of your mouth. I speak divine order into my finances not someday, not when I feel worthy, not when the world agrees, but now, for order is not a reward for effort, it is the result of alignment. And I now align with the rhythm of wealth that has always been mine in spirit before I ever saw a dime in matter. Let it sink. I am a holy steward of infinite supply. I do not apologize for abundance. I do not shrink before prosperity. I do not flinch at overflow, for I know that divine substance expands in the hands of the aligned, and I am aligned by word, by rhythm, by decree, by daily obedience to invisible truth. Breathe it in again. These habits are sacred and cannot fail, not because of magic, not because of pressure, not because of hustle, but because they are rooted in the nature of God Himself, whose ways are law, whose patterns are perfect, whose treasury cannot be emptied, and whose covenant cannot be broken by appearances, emotions, or economic downturns. Let this final declaration fall like oil on your crown. My life now bends to divine rhythm. My speech is a command post. My mind is a garden of truth. My hands carry favor. And my days are governed by the supply system of heaven. I walk in the path of the ever-increasing, the always provided for, the divinely funded, and I shall not want, not now, not ever again. Now breathe. Let the old version of you disintegrate in silence. Let the contradictions be washed away in this moment of pure spoken agreement. For this is not just affirmation, it is architecture. It is not just encouragement, it is enforcement. And the laws of heaven are not optional suggestions, they are binding covenants that manifest the moment you stop rehearsing defeat and begin rhythmically declaring truth. And now, you are ready for the next chamber in this blueprint. You are no longer wondering, wishing, or waiting. You are walking. And now, we arrive at the gate of consecration, not the casual promise of a curious viewer hoping for a spark of motivation, not the wavering half-commitment of the one who tries today but forgets tomorrow, but the solemn, bold, vibrational agreement of the soul, who knows that everything in their world bends to what they speak, what they repeat, what they decree, and what they do when no one else is watching. For this covenant is not about challenge, it is about calibration. It is not about proving something to goad, it is about partnering with law, with order, with rhythm, with the sacred intelligence that runs the universe without error, without interruption, without hesitation, and now calls you to walk in synchronized step with the treasury of heaven through holy habit, through divine rhythm, through spoken dominion. So listen to me now, not with your ears alone, but with your future, with your inheritance, with every version of you that has been exhausted by effort and now stands on the edge of spiritual governance. You are not promising to be perfect. You are not vowing to be robotic. You are covenanting to keep these 8 divine habits for 8 divine weeks, not as superstition, not as ritual, not as a formula, but as your daily alignment, your sacred structure, your spoken scaffolding for a life where lack is no longer legal and delay no longer dominates your timeline. 8 habits for 8 weeks. Why 8? Because in divine symbology, 8 is the number of new beginnings, of resurrection, of divine cycles complete and reset. Because on the 8th day, the old law is fulfilled and the new covenant begins. Because this is not the continuation of who you've been, it is the holy relaunch of who you now are. So I say to you now, in the language of kings, in the tongue of prophets, in the cadence of heaven, say these words aloud with breath, with heart, with full body certainty. Let them rise from your gut like a trumpet through a canyon, echoing through all false timelines and shattering every agreement you've made with smallness. For 8 weeks I will not break divine habit. I no longer align with panic, I align with power. I no longer consult fear, I consult the treasury of spirit. I no longer delay heaven's plan through emotional inconsistency. I now walk in daily precision, in spiritual rhythm, in covenant with the law that governs galaxies and pays every invoice of faith with invisible speed and supernatural generosity. Say it again. For 8 weeks I live as a gatekeeper of order. I speak at dawn. I praise before payment. I surrender control and call in channels. I move when led and give thanks before I see. I laugh at appearances. I override fear. I walk in holy rhythm. I honor my declarations. And now, with full faith, with no fear, declare the final vow that shuts the mouth of the enemy and severs all past patterns of limitation. The old system failed me. Divine law now governs me. Let that ring through your bloodstream. Let that vibrate in your bones. Let that be the seal upon your tongue when doubt whispers, when fear tempts, when appearances tease, when the bills pile, when the phone doesn't ring, when others laugh, when nothing moves, because this isn't a contract with emotion. This is a covenant with truth. And truth always pays. Truth never lies. Truth never fails. So choose it. Choose it again. And when your soul forgets, return to this moment, not to beg, not to ask, but to remember. You don't need a miracle. You are the miracle in motion, the mouthpiece of the word, the steward of the treasury, the builder of new economic dimensions by nothing more than your daily alignment, your sacred routine, and your spoken agreement with the wealth of heaven that has been hovering over your life, waiting only for your rhythm to match its readiness. You are now ready for the benediction, the sealing oil, the final alignment. And now, beloved, we arrive not at the end, but at the beginning, clothed in revelation, not a conclusion, but a coronation, where the old garment of confusion is stripped away and the robe of divine understanding is placed upon your shoulders, where the voice of condemnation is silenced beneath the sound of your new decree, and the shame of delay is anointed with oil and redefined as preparation for demonstration. For you are not behind, you are not late, you are not forgotten, and you are not disqualified. You are simply being brought into alignment, into divine position, into the rhythm of heaven's pulse that knows no lack, no loss, no limitation, only increase, only orchestration, only the perfect fulfillment of time through truth. You see, the enemy of your wealth was never the balance in your bank account, nor the job that didn't come, nor the door that wouldn't open, nor the years that seemed wasted. It was always the belief that your timing had expired, the lie that said others were chosen but you were not, the deception that made you worship the appearance instead of the word, the illusion that kept you from aligning with the system that never fails. Divine law, spiritual order, spoken alignment, rhythmic obedience. And now that you have entered the treasury of these habits, the architecture of God's financial plan, the sacred corridors of speaking, thanking, surrendering, commanding, receiving, you must understand this truth so deep, so irrevocable, so eternal, that it etches itself on your identity and becomes the breath you carry into every hour. You are not behind. You are being aligned. For delay is not denial, it is design. And what seemed like a detour was the Spirit dragging you away from counterfeit supply so that you could discover the fountain that never runs dry. What felt like failure was God closing systems that could not sustain your anointing. What looked like silence was the earth holding its breath, waiting for you to speak, to command, to declare, to initiate the word into the womb of time so that your future would have no choice but to give birth to the wealth that has always belonged to you, not as a prize, but as a portion, not as a reward, but as your rightful inheritance. And so now, I ask you to take one final posture, not of begging, not of hoping, not even of requesting, but of divine finality. Let your spine rise tall with the knowledge that angels listen when you speak. Let your voice take on the weight of kingship. Let your heart beat in rhythm with the treasury of heaven, and say with Minot timidly, not experimentally, but with holy fire, I am not behind, I am divinely aligned. I do not chase, I attract through command. I do not fear, I speak from authority. I do not wait, I decree, and it is done. Say it again, not for me, not for others, but for the old version of you that tried to earn what could only be spoken, for the tired version of you that begged for drops when oceans were waiting, for the unsure version of you that whispered when they should have thundered. I am not behind, I am being aligned. Every habit is holy, every word is a seed, every day is ordered, every lack is dissolving, every account is rising, every step is covered, every door is opening. Every channel is flowing, every moment is blessed, every declaration is performing. And now, I say this with the full weight of divine law behind it, as one who has seen miracles obey rhythm, as one who has watched lack evaporate beneath praise, as one who has witnessed doors burst open with nothing more than a sentence of truth whispered in the dark. You are already walking in the new. You are already dripping with favor. You are already enrolled in God's financial blueprint. You are already sealed by these habits. You are already funded by Heaven's bank. You are already marked with divine timing. You are already rich in spirit, and therefore unstoppable in form. So let the world adjust to your frequency. Let appearances submit to your rhythm. Let time rearrange for your arrival. Let substance shape itself around your voice. You no longer wonder when it will happen. You now declare, it is happening. It is here. It is mine. This is your covenant. This is your hour. This is your season. This is your command. Comment below. I am in covenant with God's supply. Subscribe to seal your daily rhythm. Speak boldly, move rhythmically, expect lavishly, and never forget, your words are your wand. Use them to call forth Eden,